Have you ever witnessed a moment where heaven touches earth, where the impossible becomes reality through pure faith? Today, you'll hear about Michael Sullivan, a firefighter who faced certain death in a blazing inferno, and the miraculous event that defied every law of physics when he uttered his final prayer to the Virgin Mary. What happened next left witnesses speechless and scientists without explanation. Before we continue, leave a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I really want to see how far these powerful stories are reaching. The alarm bells at Station 19 in Brooklyn pierced through the humid September night at 2:47 a.m. Michael Sullivan had been a firefighter for 15 years, but the chill that ran down his spine that night was unlike anything he'd felt before. As he pulled on his gear, his fingers briefly touched the small medallion of the Virgin Mary that his grandmother had given him when he joined the department. She pressed it into his palm with trembling hands, saying, "She'll watch over you when I can't." Michael had worn it every single day since, tucked beneath his uniform, a silent guardian against the flames he battled. The call was for a 4-story apartment building on Maple Street, fully engulfed, with multiple people trapped inside. As Engine 19 screamed through the empty streets, Michael could see the orange glow painting the sky from blocks away. The building was old, built in the 1920s, with narrow hallways and wooden frames that would feed the fire like kindling. Captain Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio, listing the known occupants still inside. 7 souls, including 2 children on the 4th floor. Michael had always been the first one in. His fellow firefighters called him Iron Mike, not because of his strength, though he was strong, but because of his unwavering determination to bring everyone home alive. He'd pulled 43 people from fires over his career, each rescue etched into his memory like a sacred record. But as they arrived at Maple Street and he saw the building consumed by flames that seemed to reach toward heaven itself, something deep in his gut whispered that tonight would be different. The heat hit him like a physical wall as he entered the building with his partner, Tommy Chun. The visibility was zero. The smoke, so thick it felt like breathing tar. They could hear screaming from somewhere above, mixed with the roar of the fire and the groaning of the building structure. Michael and Tommy found the elderly couple on the 2nd floor first, huddled in their bathroom, and got them out. Then a teenager on the 3rd floor, unconscious from smoke inhalation, but still breathing. It was when Michael heard the children cry on the 4th floor that everything changed. Tommy's air gauge was running low, and protocol demanded he exit. Michael should have gone with him, should have waited for backup, but those cries cut through him like nothing else could. He had a daughter, Emma, just turned 6, with the same high-pitched voice when she was scared. Without hesitation, he climbed the stairs alone, the heat growing more intense with each step. The 4th floor hallway was an inferno. The flames had eaten through the walls, creating a tunnel of fire. But at the end of that tunnel, behind apartment 4B's door, he could hear them clearly now. 2 children, probably no more than 7 or 8, crying for their mother. Michael kicked the door in and found them huddled in the corner of what had been a living room. The ceiling above them beginning to buckle. A boy and a girl, twins by the look of them, their faces streaked with tears and soot. "I've got you," Michael said, scooping them up, one in each arm. They were so light, like birds. The boy wrapped his arms around Michael's neck, whispering, "Are we going to die?" Michael's heart cracked, but his voice stayed steady. "Not today, buddy. Not on my watch." The journey back should have been simple. He'd done it hundreds of times. But as he stepped into the hallway, the ceiling behind him collapsed with a thunderous crash, sending a wave of superheated air that knocked him forward. The children screamed. Michael held them tighter, shielding them with his body as burning debris rained down. When he looked up, his blood turned to ice. The stairwell he'd come up was gone, replaced by a wall of flame and fallen beams. He turned to find another way, but the floor beneath his feet was soft, weakened by the fire below. Each step had to be calculated, careful. The children were coughing now, the smoke getting to them despite Michael pressing their faces into his coat. His own air was running low, the gauge beeping its warning. For minutes, maybe 5, before his tank was empty, there was a window at the end of the hall. If he could reach it, maybe the ladder truck could get to them. But as he took another step, the floor gave way. Not completely. but enough that his left leg went through, the broken boards tearing through protective gear and into flesh. The pain was immediate and blinding. He bit down on his scream, not wanting to scare the children more than they already were. With enormous effort, he pulled his leg free, blood now soaking into his boot. The window was still 20 feet away, but it might as well have been 20 miles. Each step was agony, his injured leg barely supporting his weight. The children had gone quiet, too quiet, overcome by the smoke. Michael's own vision was starting to blur, his air gauge now screaming its final warning. This was it. This was how he would die. Not alone, but failing to save two innocent children. It was then, in that moment of absolute despair, that Michael Sullivan fell to his knees. The heat was unbearable, the smoke choking, his leg useless. He pulled the children close, trying to shelter them with his body, and his hand found a medallion at his chest. His grandmother's voice echoed in his memory, from all those Sunday mornings at church, teaching him the prayers she'd learned from her own mother in Ireland. "Holy Mary, Mother of God," he whispered, his voice cracking, tears streaming down his face behind his mask. "I'm not asking for myself. Please, I'm begging you, save these children. They're innocent. They have their whole lives ahead of them. If someone has to die here tonight, let it be me, but please, please don't let it be them." His air ran out mid-prayer, and he pulled off his mask, sharing his last breath with the children, placing over their faces. The smoke filled his lungs immediately, like breathing in death itself. The world started to go dark around the edges. Michael held the children tighter, whispering, "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," over and over. He could feel the floor weakening beneath them, could hear the flames getting closer. This was the end. But then, something impossible happened. A coolness touched his face, like a gentle breeze on a spring morning. Michael forced his eyes open, certain he was hallucinating from oxygen deprivation. There, in the middle of the inferno, stood a woman. She wore simple blue robes that seemed untouched by the flames, her face radiating a soft light that pushed back the smoke and darkness. She looked at Michael with eyes full of infinite compassion and stretched out her hand. "Stand up, Michael," she said, and her voice was like music, cutting through the roar of the fire. "Your prayer has been heard." Michael wanted to tell her he couldn't, that his leg was destroyed, that he had no air, that it was impossible. But as her fingers touched his shoulder, strength flooded through him. His leg no longer hurt. His lungs impossibly filled with clean air. He stood, lifting the children with ease, and the woman smiled. "Follow me," she said, turning toward the wall of flame that blocked their escape. She walked forward, and the fire parted like water, creating a corridor of cool air. Michael followed, not understanding, not questioning, just following. The flames bent away from them, the smoke cleared, and the damaged floor held firm beneath their feet. It was like walking through a garden instead of an inferno. They reached the stairwell, which moments ago had been completely destroyed. Now it stood intact, untouched, as if the fire had never been there at all. The woman turned to Michael one last time. "Your grandmother prays for you every day," she said. "Tell her that her prayers have been answered." Then she was gone, vanished between one blink and the next. Michael stumbled down the stairs, the children stirring in his arms, and burst through the front door into the night air. The crowd of firefighters and paramedics rushed forward, Tommy Chin at the front, tears streaming down his face. "Mike! Oh, God! Mike, we thought you were gone." The whole fourth floor collapsed 5 minutes ago. But as Michael turned to look back at the building, he saw it was true. The fourth floor was completely gone, consumed by flames. There was no way he could walk through it, no way he could have survived. Yet here he was, not even singed, the children breathing steadily in his arms. Even his leg, which he knew had been torn open, showed no sign of injury when the paramedics examined him. The twins recovered fully, reunited with their mother who had been at work during the fire. They didn't remember much, just a nice lady who made them feel safe and not scared anymore. The other firefighters at the scene couldn't explain what they'd seen on the thermal cameras. A cool spot moving through the inferno, temperatures dropping from 1200 degrees to 70 degrees in a perfect path from apartment 4B to the stairwell. Michael tried to tell them what happened, but most dismissed it as hallucinations from smoke inhalation. Only Tommy believed him, because Tommy had seen something on the thermal camera that he'd never told anyone else. The cool spot hadn't been just a temperature anomaly. It had been person-shaped, walking ahead of Michael and the children, leading them to safety. The next Sunday, Michael went to visit his grandmother, bringing her flowers as always. But when he walked into her room at the nursing home, she was sitting up in bed, more alert than she'd been in months, tears streaming down her face. "I saw her, Michael," she whispered. "Last Tuesday night, I saw the Blessed Mother in my dreams. She told me she was going to save my grandson, that my prayers had built a bridge between heaven and earth." Michael pulled out the medallion, still hanging around his neck, and showed it to his grandmother. It had changed. The image of Mary, which had been worn almost smooth from years of wear, was now sharp and clear, as if newly minted. And there was something else, something that made them both cry. At Mary's feet, barely visible unless you looked closely, were three small figures, a firefighter and two children, walking through parted flames. The fire department conducted a full investigation, but could find no explanation for Michael's survival. The building structure showed he had walked through areas that were completely destroyed at the time he claimed to have passed through them. His air gauge showed he'd run out of oxygen a full 7 minutes before he emerged from the building. By all laws of physics and human physiology, Michael Sullivan should have died that night. But he didn't. He lived to continue saving lives, 43 becoming 60, then 80, then over 100. He never saw the woman in blue again, but he felt her presence sometimes, in the moment when hope seemed lost, when the impossible was the only option left. And every time, without fail, the impossible became possible. The twins, Sarah and James Morrison, grew up to become doctors, dedicating their lives to saving others as they had been saved. They kept a photo of Michael in their offices, their guardian angel in firefighter's gear. And though they didn't remember the lady in blue, sometimes, when they were treating patients who should have died but didn't, they felt a coolness in the air, smelled something like roses in the sterile hospital rooms, and knew that miracles still happened. Michael retired after 25 years of service, his body finally too worn to continue, though his spirit remained willing. At his retirement ceremony, the department chaplain asked him to speak about that night on Maple Street. Michael stood before his brothers and sisters in uniform and simply said, "I learned that night that we're never alone in the darkness. Sometimes heaven comes down to walk with us through the flames. Our job isn't to understand it, but to be ready when it does, to have the faith to follow when the impossible path opens before us." His grandmother lived to be 97, passing peacefully in her sleep with Michael holding her hand. Her last words were, "I can see her, Michael. She's so beautiful. She says to tell you that your work isn't done, that every life you save created ripples that will go on forever." The medallion she'd given him now sits in a frame in his home, a reminder that some things transcend explanation, that faith isn't about understanding, but about trust. Years later, when people asked Michael if he really believed the Virgin Mary had saved him that night, he would touch the spot where the medallion used to rest against his chest and say, "I don't believe it. I know it. I was there. I walked through fire that should have consumed me, breathed air that didn't exist, stood on floors that had already collapsed." You can call it whatever makes you comfortable, a miracle, an anomaly, a hallucination. But I know what I saw, who I saw, and I know that in our darkest moments, when all human strength fails, there's something greater that can reach through and pull us back from the edge. The building on Maple Street was never rebuilt. The lot became a small park, with a memorial to those who were saved that night. If you go there early in the morning, when the dew is still on the grass, locals say you can sometimes smell roses, even though no roses grow there. And sometimes, children play in their report seeing a kind lady in blue who tells them to be careful, to stay safe, to know they are loved. Michael Sullivan still lives in Brooklyn, spending his days teaching fire safety at schools, his evenings volunteering at the church his grandmother loved. He doesn't talk much about that night anymore, doesn't need to. The evidence lives in the lives that continue because he survived, in the children and grandchildren of those he saved, in the unbroken chain of love and sacrifice that defines the best of humanity. And on quiet nights, when he's alone with his thoughts, He still whispers the same prayer of gratitude, still feels that cool touch on his shoulder, still knows that miracles are real because he lived through one. If this story touched your heart, the next video on your screen will restore your faith even more. Click now to witness another incredible moment where heaven intervened when all hope was lost.